Okay, so let's take a look at the result here. This is the full spectrum lasers clear resin, FSL 3D's clear resin. I bought some off of eBay. Someone was selling at a reasonable price, and I wanted to give it a shot and see how it worked in the Titan 1. So there will be a time-lapse video after the narrated portion, so you can see what it looked like as we built the part. I'm still at about 100 micron resolution, 93 to be precise, on my exposure settings. And it turned out that it takes about 10 seconds minimum to cure this. Anything less than 10 seconds on my test parts, and there were layers that did not attach. And then more than 10 seconds, of course, risks overcure. And you can see that there's actually quite a bit of overcure. This is a sphere on the outside, and then the bottom has a kind of a base, and then there's a cone with another solid sphere on the inside, just to kind of demonstrate the clear resin. And so this outer sphere it's a sphere with the bottom cut off to flatten the bottom, and it has a 1 millimeter thick shell. And we can see that a couple of interesting and unfortunate artifacts formed here. I'll finish scraping this so I can get it down. We can take a closer look. There are a bunch of overcure artifacts that make the final result a bit unattractive. It'll take some finishing to make this a little better, but it may not be possible to get it really, really good unless I start looking at different types of additives. We can see here that at the bottom there are a bunch of cure artifacts here, where on the outside there was a bunch of overcure. Now, outside overcure is not as big of a problem because of course I could sand that down. And then some weird distortions at the very bottom. I'm not exactly sure what happened here. I might have to go back to the video, but we can see kind of down here in the base that didn't come out exactly right. There's some kind of angled, flattish areas where the bottom of the sphere is inset more than it should, and then here it kind of angles in. I'm not exactly sure what happened here that caused some of these effects. And then at the top, what you can clearly see then is that there's overcure on the inside somehow. So at the top of the sphere here. Now the outside smoothness of the spheres actually is quite good above this overcured area. So that's a good thing. Just feeling it in the way that the scraper goes over it. There's very few artifacts up here. I'm not sure what the problem down here was. I don't know why there are these partially cured bits that end up over here. Looking in the vat, I don't have any partially cured bits in the vat, so if anything came off, it eventually got picked up by the rest of the print. It's hard to say exactly what went wrong. So it's pretty clear, but the problem with I guess making a one-piece snow globe like this is with a one-piece snow globe, you have no way of finishing the interior part. But this stuff here is quite clear. It's way clearer than the Venus Creator. It's also much slower. This may be more like the Maker Juice. It may even be slower than the Maker Juice, since under 10 seconds at 100 microns you wouldn't be able to get anything. I ended up printing this at 12-second exposure at the end, just to make sure it would cure. And then for the sides here that are not extremely sloped, that turned out okay. But then as we got the upper end, as we started to come in to close it, right, the outside part is okay, but the inside part has gotten a bunch of overcure. So I'm gonna have to see if I don't know if dyes are gonna make a difference. I mean, you can see, fortunately, you can see that there is a piece inside, so that's kind of cool. Then I'm gonna have to try to I'm also gonna try to figure out how to preserve this finish. This will go cloudy if I dip it in IPA, so I'm wondering whether I can save it from going cloudy, since I don't need this part to be dimensional. It's purely decorative. If I perhaps cure it in the UV chamber, kind of just as is, letting it flow down and letting the excess liquid gas resin fill gaps naturally. So I cured this for about 4 hours under UV, and then another 5 minutes underwater. And I'm gonna need to go do the whole surface underwater and under UV in order to get the surface fully dry. The surface was still a bit sticky, a little slimy after doing the 5 minutes underwater. All of the parts that were underwater, I put under here, the water only got up to about yay high, were less slimy than the parts that were not underwater. So I think maybe a good 30 minutes to an hour underwater would be good. Underwater does pose an issue though, because this globe is hollow. So I actually cannot hold this part completely underwater. Only parts of it would be underwater at any given time. So far this treatment has not caused the surface to cloud. Some parts are still really quite nice and clear, and you can see through it and see the inner sphere on the cone post inside of the globe. This stuff is, I think I mentioned before, much clearer than the Venus Creator. Clearer in that the Venus Creator is still a bit yellowish. So under warm light, say 2700 Kelvin, you probably wouldn't see much of a difference between this and the Venus Creator. But under more daylight conditions, cooler light, maybe in the 4,000 to 5,000 Kelvin range, you would definitely see that this was much clearer than the Venus Creator. The Venus Creator isn't really water clear, or it isn't water clear under all lighting conditions. So I'm going to try now to deplate this so that I can fit it underwater a little bit easier. With the build plate in my little box, it's a little difficult, and we'll see if I manage to get it off without damaging it. Oh, that's the nut there. There we go. I just got to get around the nut. There we go. Alright. So we got it off. This is what it looks like. And yeah, there's the nut, so that came out. Stuff is, as most resin, a bit brittle, but not super brittle, because that bit broke off. This was 75 seconds for this base layer. Looks a little thick. Probably could get a little bit closer to the print bed. Fairly strong. You can see that this layer I can bend quite far. So thin pieces at least are fairly flexible. I should be able to eventually break it. There we go, by pushing it down. But that got pretty far. And so I expect this globe hopefully should be pretty strong. But I'm going to have to fully cure it. We can see here a little bit better now what happened. I'm not sure what went wrong. Some of the parts, you see there's a base layer here, and then somehow there's a whole gap that got messed up down here. We can see that if I look at it from the side, this part here didn't really build outwards. It should be a kind of an outward shape, right, following the sphere. Instead it's kind of a diagonal line, and that's different than if I rotate a bit here. It's a little bit better, although they're still close to the bottom here. It's kind of round, and then it falls down, right? Here it's a little bit earlier, but here we still see it all around. Some roundness problem. And I'm not sure, it's possible that there was some kind of failure here that wasn't easily visible from outside. Detachment failure, and that these bits up here are bits that were picked up from failures at the bottom. Or they could just be, randomness from overcure. It's difficult to tell. Also hard to tell exactly what it is that I picked up here also. Whether it's possible that this section here on the inside is, well, it's probably not junk that was on the inside, because there is a fairly solid piece inside. And while the sphere is hollow, the cone part here that sticks up is quite solid, and that seems to have built up quite well. Of course, a cone is kind of a solid cone, at least, is a kind of an easier shape, because there isn't going to be any overcure, because the widest part is at the base, and it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, so there's no chance of overcure, at least, causing the later layers curing through to the earlier layers, because every place that's lit up in the earlier layer is already solid. It is possible that overcure caused the inner sphere to be a little deformed, but given the imperfect surface finish here, it's hard to say exactly what the inside is like. It's also hard to say what the inner surface finish is of the sphere down here. I would have to polish up the outside in order to get better visibility into the surface finish on the inside. So that's something I'm going to have to try. First, I'm going to have to sand off all of these imperfections here, and then I'm going to have to sand and polish down the rest of this down to a reasonably good surface finish, probably using the Novus plastic polish, starting with sandpaper and then working down in Novus plastic polish in order to get this clear enough to look through. I'm not sure if I'll have enough time this week to finish that, but if I do, I will post some pictures.